First piece is to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was all the way back in July. For those of you who are trying to dust off your memories. I went back over the minutes. Mary, the only thing that I saw was just the spelling of the Warrigan building, which is what was at the very end of the minutes. And Warrigan, or I think someone corrected me that it's actually pronounced Warrigan.
Yes.
Is Wauregan.
Wauregan.
Yeah, but that was such a tiny thing, right? And that was it.
I noticed only because I'm on the commission that both of Paola's names are misspelled. It's Paola, and then her last name is Ferrario, not Ferraria.
Can you spell that again? Well, I will have to find out.
It's Ferrario, I believe.
All right. Well, if it's an I believe, then I'll have to see if I can.
No, it is. That is how she spells her last name.
Okay, and how? All right.
Her first name is Paola, Paola, and it's Ferrario. Ferrario.
How do you pronounce it again, Alana?
Paola Ferrario.
Paola? Okay, I was just wondering. Thanks.
Well, better than the city council called her Paola several times to her face. Yeah.
Oh, that is quite terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, no. All right. Well, we can at least get it right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of all the things that we have control over, we could do that. Okay, awesome. Anyone else see anything else in the minutes? Or are we good to go? All right.
I take that back. There's only one R in the second part of her last name.
Okay, I'll see if I can find out the.
No. I have her email right here. It's okay. Ferrario.
Okay.
I promise.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Did you have who was the first?
It was me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I know. I never make motions. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Alina, Alana, was that a yes?
No, the only reason I didn't say anything is because I was wondering about this prior to this meeting. In our whole commission meetings now, we have to take roll call after every motion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to.
We do.
Okay, no. So I'm
happy to.
I'm happy to vote this normally.
So, what I think that means in terms of setting it up, though, is like Mary. It would probably make sense for you to call the roll call because you have people you have the attendance at the top of your minutes of who's here, and then you could go in the same order each time.
Where is that?
Well, I can just do it if I write down a list.
Yeah, I actually think it is the chairperson that's supposed to do it, but that's usually the way we do it at conservation, but okay. Whatever.
Well, in future meetings, I can make sure that I have written down the list ahead of time. Let me get it in alphabetical order. Give me a sec. It's Alana and not Alina, right?
Right. It is Ilana. Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. Maribel Ortiz. Do you have to call out people who are not there and mark them as not there?
I don't think so.
No. Gurninder, how do you pronounce your last name?
Dhaliwal. Dhaliwal. Dhaliwal.
Okay. I could see some of your last name, but not all of it on my screen. Thank you.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Okay, so if we're doing a roll call vote on accepting the minutes, it would be Alana Aubrey.
Yes.
Gurninder Dalawal. Were you able to look at the minutes, Gurninder?
Yes, I did.
We're just voting on accepting the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, Michael Falsetti,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mary Moriarty,
Yes.
Maribel Ortiz,
Yes.
and Israel Rivera.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. We're going to move to item number 2, which is updates on past projects. Mayor Field is very much sort of in the final scope of it is being discussed. And Israel, feel free to weigh in here. Israel and I spoke with Tom Reynolds about what was happening at Mayor Field, and Tom is here. He can give us an update too, just around what's happening right now and what is coming in the next few weeks, and maybe also later this year in the spring. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself and jump in and give an update?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Tom Reynolds, new Parks Director. The Mayor Field update is we are putting in a walkway from the street to the playground. The playground installation itself is about done. There's a little patch job that needs to be done. So hopefully by the end of this week, early next week, we'll have concrete walkway from the raised crosswalks on Westfield Road to the playground itself. In terms of field improvements, we're still working on what we need to do. Anything we're going to do to the softball or baseball field there, we're probably better off to do in the spring. So once it's done and completed, the teams that will be using it will be ready to go. We won't have to retill it if we do it in the fall before the freeze, and let it set for the winter, and then redo it in the spring again. So like I said, Raymaker's up there right now, and we're just plugging away at that and hopefully get that wrapped up sooner than later.
Can you talk more about the field improvements? Because I feel like on our end, we did a lot of vetting the playground structure, but sort of what field improvements meant was really unclear for a while.
Yep. Field improvements will probably be with the playing surface. We're thinking about maybe taking out the grass of the infield and keep it all dirt. Easier to keep level. There's no lips. There's no, no crabgrass that would grow instead of real grass there. I think it would be a better playing surface for all the levels of ages that use that. It's primarily our younger groups that are using that, so it's a little more consistent in terms of ground balls and whatnot that way. Foul poles will be another thing that it could definitely be used at that place. There's gate. I wouldn't say it's field improvements, but there's a new gate and fence going to be put up there as well. We're looking to do probably a concrete slab underneath those picnic tables, so it's a nicer of a sitting area, and it's just not 2 tables floating around in the grass. I know for securement reasons, to be CPA eligible, it's got to be secured. So another reason why we'd like to do that as well.
Do you feel confident that you're going to have the labor that you need to make that happen? Or will that be happening in-house? Or is that you're going to use CPA funding to come up with the labor force to do that work?
I'd have to talk to my grounds guys and see what they're able to do in terms of the ground surfacing. In terms of foul poles and stuff like that, for put those to secure other things down, we would probably outsource. The concrete slab would definitely be outsourced for those picnic tables. But I think the other stuff we could probably keep it, hopefully in-house, and then you have that money. So like you said, we'll go as we see, as once we start breaking ground that dirt and see what we can do. But I'm pretty sure my ground guys take care of that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I
Sorry.
I wanted to say thank you to Tom for coming up with the solution with the leveling of the field, especially the maintenance of the field, and coming up with the idea of just removing the infield, and that could be both for baseball and softball. Makes it interchangeable and makes it better for a lot safer too as well. Just wanted to say that, and that we also got a new maintenance guy that works for DPW out of Parks and Rec. He's actually been maintaining McNally Field over here, and I'm here now. He did a great job. So I'm confident that DPW actually has some new guys that can actually do some of this work in-house. Just based off of what I've seen today with this new guy that they just hired, hopefully it all translates in the future. Just wanted to say that.
That's good news. Michael, I saw your hand too.
Tom, Mike Falsetti. Tom, a couple of questions. One probably can't answer at this point in time. Do you think you have all the finances needed to do all the things you just described, or are they based on a portion, say 25% or some percentage that has to come from another funding source at this point in time? Would you have that answer, number one? And number two, when all things are said and done and all the things that you hope to get accomplished are done, is this a 2-year project, a 1-year project, a 2.5-year project? At this point, can you answer any of those two questions?
Do you want me to talk about the financial piece of it?
Yeah. If you got the numbers, Chris, go.
I do have the numbers.
Yeah.
This is Chris Baker. I was took over for Bob Parent. So I have the accounting numbers. So the original grant was for $210,000. The Emmy O'Brien contract for the playground component was $157,000. We'll say round up. So the walkway with Raymakers was about 10. It was less than 10 for procurement reasons. So you have about $44,000 left to do field improvements that you want to do. So that's you can take it from there, Tom.
Cool. Thank you.
Which is also interesting too, because initially the thought was that the playscape itself would take up almost all of that 210. So the playscape itself did come in significantly under budget, creating that chunk of funding.
Yeah, to just go on with Chris, I think with whatever money was allocated and awarded for this project, I think would be, I don't think we need an outside funding source to complete the work of field improvements, whatever that loose term is, with what we have planned to go. Like if we wanted to do a full regrade and new grass and create a better playing surface, I mean, just to get irrigation would be the idea to do that. Irrigation would be probably well over that. So we're trying to stay in the scope of what was awarded. Like I said, this was already kind of halfway along, maybe a little more than that as I got my role here as Parks Director. So I'm just trying to kind of carry on that way. In terms of finishing, I mean, like I said, that concrete walkway is going to be put in there. They just put some loam and some whatnot to go down off that to, I guess, make the sides of the concrete kind of blend into the grass at some point. In terms of the fencing and the gate, not sure what that window's looking like, but like I said, for the playing surface, it'd probably be better to do it next spring. So then as soon as it's done, the teams can go on there. So I'd say hopefully by beginning of summer, I'd hope to have all that all done. That's all if we order the fencing and what we have in the gate and whatnot is, no supply chain issues, and we get it according to, a normal planned delivery date. So, I'd like to say by the summer it'd be wrapped up, but I mean, I can't really put a finger on that because there's still some loose ends to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on and explaining that to us. That's really great.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Because Chris Baker is here, I'm going to move us next to the Pulaski Park study. Chris, do you want to give us a sense of what was found so far in the study that was done during phase 1 of the grant?
Sure. Do you want to talk about the War Memorial building as well, or are we skipping over that one?
Yeah, actually, that makes sense. Let's do War Memorial first, and then we'll do Pulaski Park.
Okay. Yeah, because I just wanted to say a couple of things. So that project is finished. And so the washing was complete. They did a chemical wash on the building. And so the CPA grant was for $60,000 and it ended up coming only $800 over that. So the DPW threw an extra $800. So we are complete on that. And I just need to make some edits to the final report, but we have the before and after pictures and it looks a lot better. They weren't able to get all of the staining out, especially around the roof line. But essentially what they were saying was if he could keep washing it and it would just start eroding the limestone. And so at some point you have to stop. But when you do compare the before and afters, it's dramatically different. So that's the War Memorial building. The roof is that's a whole different project that hasn't begun yet. So
is that being done under ARPA funding?
Mm-hmm. No, that was a city appropriation actually. Yeah. Okay. All right, so the Pulaski Park
Hold on, I
study.
think I see Amy's hand up. Maybe she's supposed to.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and then the next part will also be having some kind of CPA acknowledgement signed for the war memorial.
Okay, do you have any examples of that you could send me as far as
Yeah, I can
what
send
needs to
you.
get printed or?
I can send you like sample language and a sign that was used before. I guess you'd also have to think about, yeah, where the sign would be, you know, if it, I assume in the lobby of the building, you know, as people walk in.
Sure. Yeah, if
But
you could send me anything you could send me would be helpful to ordering
Okay.
that. Okay. All right. Do you want me to move on to the Pulaski Park study?
Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions on War Memorial? Okay. All right, we're good to go.
Okay, so the Pulaski Park study, I'm just jumping into this project. I wasn't here when any of this work was done, so I'm just kind of reporting back what I do know. So it was a $40,000 total CPA grant. We contracted with Fuss and O'Neill, which is an engineering company, for 13,500 of that to do a preliminary study. So their findings, so they basically gave us a report that is essentially a structural evaluation just from looking at the surface. They didn't do any borings or any other kinds of investigations. And then they also gave us a preliminary site plan that's kind of a concept level plan for the repairs that they're recommending, and it's more for aesthetics as far as fixing some of the ornamental pieces of the concrete. So I can share that with you actually, because I think I'm a co-host, so I could just run through the plan set very quickly, kind of show you what they gave us. But the report essentially is, I mean, there's nothing earth-shattering in here. It's, I mean, the concrete is worn and weathered. It's delaminating. There's cracks in a lot of the precast piers and panels. There are sections that are tilted, which are, I mean, that's of most concern structurally. So they were unable to determine whether or not the wall was stable in those sections that are tilting. And they concluded that it was likely due to the vegetation growing so close to the wall. And then there's also a question about the drain line that runs alongside the wall, because there's essentially no access points into it. So no one's really sure if the condition of it could be leaking and causing and probably exacerbating the wall. The other option with what could be going on with the tilting is that there's something with the actual soil and material that's underneath the wall. And then that's eroding. So essentially what they recommended is to clear the vegetation and so especially the roots and things aren't close to the wall. So that would be something either the DPW would be doing or something that would have to be contracted out based on the staffing issues at DPW. And then, let's see. So there's that. And then they also were recommending removing an area of cracked sidewalk to expose some of the base material to get a sense of what it was actually constructed on, and to do a geotech evaluation of that. And then also to gain access to the storm drain, which would involve, I mean, it could be installing a new manhole, and whether or not that comes out of CPA funding or if that is something that the DPW could handle in their operations budget. I haven't determined whether or not that's possible, but installing a manhole so that you can get a camera into the line to determine if it's leaking and causing erosion essentially near or under the wall. So that was the basic overview of what they found. I think with the fact that they only spent 13,500 doing the study, the recommendations, and the preliminary concept plan, my recommendation would be to do a change order with them to do some geotechnical borings and figure out the base material. And like they recommended removing the sidewalk panel in order to look under that. So that's one thing. And then I would need to basically have an action item for myself to look into the capability of the DPW in removing vegetation, and that's probably the Parks Department, removing the vegetation so that they can evaluate the other parts of the wall that they couldn't get to, and then look at installing manholes or cleanouts or some kind of access port in order to CCTV the line, which is something that could be contracted through Fuss and O'Neill as well, the CCTV. So that's something that could be reasonably done with the budget that's remaining. So I think at this point, their report didn't have any budgetary line items for the recommendations. So I think my job is going to be to, figure out how much each of these will cost and what we can reasonably do with the remainder of the budget.
Questions or comments? Michael?
Mike Falsetti. Chris, you've answered the question, actually. You think the balance of the money you have in your wallet will cover those incidentals that you just described at this point in the ball game?
Well, it's a 1,400 linear foot wall, and usually you'd put access manholes every 200 feet. I mean, 500 feet you could probably get away with, but I mean, those manholes, well, they used to be like $6,000 each. I mean, they're more than that now. So, no, you can't do, we wouldn't be able to do all of it. I think we could do some of it.
Well, could you do the thorough engineering from soup, so to speak, soup to nuts with the balance of money you have to have a complete plan? I take it, if I understand you correctly, and I may not be understanding you correctly, but you're saying that on the surface, what they described is the conditions, but they don't really have a firm understanding of what the substructure is, both the
Correct.
composition of the soil or the composition of the concrete or the support, the integrity of the wall and the sidewalk itself. They don't really have an answer for that.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So in order to do that, we need to clear the rest of the vegetation. There would need to be some geotechnical boring, so I can get some prices on those. I think that would be important to do. And also on top of that, I'll talk to Veolia and see what their capability is and what they might be able to do as far as offsetting the cost a little bit with essentially gaining access to that pipe. So I just need to brainstorm with them, because there could be ways to do it without installing manholes.
Okay.
So that's kind of, but that's the piece that's going to be very expensive, I guess. Installing manholes along that is going to break the budget. So
Okay.
if we could figure out another way to CCTV that line, because essentially if we put the cart before the horse on this and start to do the aesthetic repairs that they were recommending on the top portion of the wall, we could be wasting money if the wall's in a failure mode. So because they had it in their scope, they provided us with a plan set that we could go out to bid to fix the ornamental wall, but we wouldn't want to do that before ensuring that it's not in some kind of structural failure.
No, good idea. Good idea. Thank you, Manager.
I'm wondering what the contract language allows for, because I think originally it was just for the restoration study versus the restoration itself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these things would still, I didn't read the contract exactly, but I think these things would still be considered investigations. If we're doing geotechnical borings, and then if we're doing construction that's really toward actually, TVing the lines, then that's really an investigation as well. So I would think it would still fit within the goal of the original contract, but I'm happy we can look at it together.
Yeah.
If that's, yeah.
Let's just review the contract language and make sure.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions about the wall? How old is the wall?
Let's see. They actually have that press report. They did not say how. I'm not sure. It doesn't say in their report. I'm not sure if someone else knows.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I believe it's the early 19th century. I mean, my memory could be wrong. I thought it was like 1912, in and about there. It was,
I know it was prior to the Olmsteads coming and creating the design for the park because they were hoping the city would take the wall down and build a new wall that they liked better out of better material. There was a great talk at the Holyoke Library last week where Bob Como had talked about kind of you can look in the city and you can see the walls that the Olmsted brothers actually brought in their own people to build versus the walls that were already there and the structures they did. And like one set is crumbling and the other's not. Tom, you're back on camera. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say I've been looking into the whole clearing of the vegetation on the backside of the park, and it has been a lot of misdirection of people who owns it and the railroad getting involved because of safety of removal and equipment and who owns what, and if it's G&E or if it's a state or if it's the railroad company. So I am working on that for sure. Just know that, it's going to be a little process trying to figure out who, what, when, and where is there. But there's between the Amtrak, I guess you could say police are definitely in on removing a lot of that because of the way the tracks lie down there and the amount of deaths that happened because of the turns and stuff down there compared to other places. It's higher number than normal, and they want to try to mitigate that process, the number, and get that down lower. So then hopefully it's obviously more safe down there for all parties involved. But I'll keep you guys up to date on that clearing. That was just kind of me poking around, seeing what we could do because it looks terrible. It's blocking the view, which I think that wall was created for, was to views, and it's not really doing it right now.
The park was to be a view park.
Yeah, and obviously the safety of what falls down there on that overgrowth side down to those railroad tracks is, encampment after encampment and stuff like that. So we're trying to keep that safe, not only for the park goers there, but for everybody involved, even the people using the trains. But they have to shut down from what I understand, they said they'd have to shut down the trains, get police involved, and a big old process. But I'm working on that. Like I said, if I make any headway on that, I will definitely bring you all up to speed on that. But I'm trying on that side of things. I know it's not the greatest, but we'll try on that.
Right, because it also strikes me that we could, move forward to these investigations and even move forward, in another cycle with restoration of the wall. And if vegetation is causing some of these issues, then we haven't really resolved the underlying issue.
Right.
If we haven't figured out a way to maintain the space, and that seems to be a recurring trend, right, and stuff going on in the city is, you can fix it once or you can build something new, but how do you build in the structures that will allow for maintenance?
Right.
Okay, well, keep us in the loop, and thank you for doing that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As we're finding out now with all the drainage issues, yeah, for sure. So, but it's a big safety issue as well. So, it's a double-edged sword here.
Chris, anything else? Okay.
No, I don't think so. Do you want me to stay on for what is your item number 3 for updates on 22 projects?
So that would be going through each of the FY22 projects and just updating if anyone has anything new to share that's been, communicated to them.
Okay.
Different members have different projects that they're connected to.
Okay, I'll hang out then. Thanks.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Amy?
Yeah, just since Chris is here, there's also the Lady Liberty project, which maybe you might want to give an update on. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be happy to if that's in the section.
Sure. I mean, it's not actually listed, but since you're here, I was just thinking of it.
Sure. Yep. So the Lady Liberty statue renovation, I believe the total cost was around $133,000. Most of it is complete, including the bronzing restoration, and a lot of basically everything in their scope is done with the exception of the granite bases and plaques that replace the text that was on the top of the statue in granite that you can't really restore it. You're supposed to just leave it as is, and so it's being replicated on plaques at the base, and those have not come in yet. I talked to the contractor this week. He's thinking that they will be fabricated by October, but they keep pushing him out. I think it's just like everything, the fabrication's delayed. So when those are in, he's going to come out for I think 2 days worth of work. There's some drips in the bronzing. I think the whatever chemical he used dripped, so he's got to clean that up and install the lighting. And so those are the remaining items. And I believe 60,000 of that was CPA, and the rest of it, the balance was an earmark, and I think maybe a donation from People's Bank. So, so that's the status of that.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that it's coming to fruition, and it sounds like there's not much left that needs to be done. Oh, did you mention anything about the flag and the flagpole and the lighting?
I'm not, yeah, sorry, I don't know about that scope item.
So they were talking about using the state funding because you can't use CPA funding to do it, but they wanted to move the flag because it's literally right in front of her face.
Okay.
And it wasn't historic. And it was supposed to be moved, I think, across and then lighted along with her.
Mike, do you know about this?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, yeah, the flag has been moved. And,
Oh, it already has been moved.
Yes, it already has been moved, and the lighting that will hit the statue will also hit the flag. So that'll cover both. So that's all set, really. It's really the, as Chris pointed out, really the supply chain problem, like everything else, that's holding up the installation of the plaques on the ground and, well, the lighting. As Chris pointed out, Chris and I had spoke earlier this week, and the opinion that I have to, that the contract, I have send a crew up and do everything at once. That is, all the plaques and do the lighting all at once for being cost effective, since it is a bid. And so I think that's really, that'll at the same time. Unless, Chris, you can add anything else to your knowledge.
Nope, that's pretty much it. That he has everything else ready to go, but they work out of New Jersey. So he's, you know, coming up specially for this project. So he wants to do it always up here for the last time.
And do we have a vendor for the lighting?
Same one.
Oh, okay.
He's going to do all the work.
Right. The guy, Madam Chairman, the company, as part of his bid package, was to do the move the flag, clean the statue, do the plaques, and install the lighting. All one person.
That's great. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. All right. Amy, can you give us an update on Wayfinders and then Chestnut Street?
Yeah, sure. So with Wayfinders, you know, the deadline is not until 2025, December 31st, 2025. So there is time. However, James Linfield, who took over from the last person, Lee Dara, has left himself. And he then told me two people who, he said there was nobody assigned to the project yet, but he gave me the names and emails of two people to stay in contact with. I then emailed them recently and said, hey, who's in charge of this project? And I got no response. So I just wanted to let you all know that. I guess what I could do is try to actually call them. Maybe a voicemail would be more effective. I don't know. So that's where we are with Wayfinders. Okay. And then Chestnut Street, which is the Valley Opportunity Council project, both the historic and the affordable housing. That I don't know if you remember, but this project again is not the deadline isn't until far into the future. But there was a preservation restriction that attorney Kathleen Degnan sent to Mass Historic Commission, a term limited preservation restriction for his approval. And it's now been, and that was a really long time ago. It's been 7 months actually since she last checked in with him. And we were originally told the whole thing would take like 30 to 60 days, remember? So, and I know that you have on the agenda more about the preservation restrictions and, you know, the change about that. So I don't know if you want to get into that now or later.
We're going to attend to that later when we get to item 4.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we move to MIFA? Amy?
Anything else? No, not about those two projects.
Okay.
Because I think Chris already shared about the War Memorial, so yeah.
Okay, so for the MIFA Murals project, so I sent on behalf of the committee a really tight deadline structure to MIFA, just explaining by this date we need the contract terms, by this date we need a drafted contract, by this point we're going to look at it in our committee in the next meeting, and things started to move. So that's a really good thing. The director of Wisteria Hearst was put in contact with the restorer, and they're working on contract terms to get to us by October 3rd. So that's a good thing to see if the project can actually move forward, and get some details established that allow us to have the language that we need to go to the city council, explain the scope of work shifting, and see if they will approve the shift. So I feel good about having a clear deadline, and MIFA understands that if the contract hasn't been developed in such a way that we can present it to city council by our next meeting, that the project will be considered defunct, so that those funds can be considered for other projects. So that feels good in terms of us coming to some conclusion with that project, either moving forward or not. The JFK Memorial, while the project was completed, we've been having difficulty getting the final signage completed. And so I know Mark Joyce is working on it. We're going to keep following up and asking how we can support. But that's something that just still hasn't happened. So we'll keep saying that in meetings until it's fixed. Mary, your hand was up.
Yes. Did you need a vote to support your having given a deadline to the MIFA project? I don't believe we did that last time, but it sounds great. But did you need a vote to back that up?
I mean, I don't know, maybe I was being tyrannical, but I felt like at a certain point, this project has to move forward, or we have to unencumber the funds. They're just sitting there.
Well,
And the project hasn't moving forward at all.
And it really goes along with what we had said in general about contracts having to be completely executed within a certain period of time. So I'm thinking maybe you do need a motion.
Okay.
Do you want one? Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the deadline that you gave?
So I proposed to them that we had to have contract terms that both Wisteria Hearst and MIFA could agree to, submitted to us by October 3rd, so that a contract could start to be developed so that we can present it to city council. And that language had to be established by the very latest by our CPA meeting so that the committee could review it.
Okay, so then the motion would be to say that MIFA must have developed contract terms by October 3rd, 2022, or the promise of funds was null and void. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, well then that's my motion.
Amy, do you want to amend it?
I'm just thinking that normally the contract terms are decided by the committee, and then, the party looks at it and says, okay, negotiates a little bit, but that it really maybe what you're talking about is the scope of work. Like, what is the plan here? And I guess I'm just trying to be more specific about what you mean when you say the terms.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Especially because it's a complicated project and both parties have to agree to it, that they have to develop terms they will both agree on that would then be used to craft the contract. So you might call that scope of work. I was just calling that contract terms because it's the thing that you end up using to develop the contract. Okay, any discussion?
Do you need an amendment to that then?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, first of all, you need a second. I don't know that I didn't hear any seconds, so.
That's true. Is there a second to entertain the motion?
I second.
Okay. So open for discussion. Michael?
Mary, Madam Chairman, October 3rd is in a week or less, week and a half, something like that. Do both parties, are they, so I understand it completely, both parties are aware that they have to come up with this by October 3rd? Are they aware of this right now?
Yep, that they have to start at least proposing terms by October 3rd, and the language has to be set by our next meeting.
And they're aware of this. As
Oh,
we
yeah. Yeah, I had a good conversation with all parties. Wisteria-Hearst in particular feels like they cannot keep waiting. They're either gonna say no if we don't move forward.
Did they say why they're apprehensive about it, other than just get it off the table?
No, I just think sometimes something is lingering, right? Like it's like just
No, that's okay. No, no.
and so for them, like they're doing programming for their space. And so if this room is going to be used for those, the murals for 2 years, a year, right? They need to
Okay.
program their space and know, well, if we're not using this space, then we're going to come up with an exhibit for that space. So they're very much waiting for, are we doing this or not? For how long? What does that mean?
And the MIFA folks are aware of that also.
Yeah. So I think I'm trying to push it forward so it can actually happen. Otherwise, I think the project just won't.
I'm beating a dead horse here. Madam Chairman, did MIFA say that they something specific was holding that was causing a delay or a resolution on this? Is there
No.
one particular line item that they're apprehensive about, or?
No, there's never been anything specifically named for why it's been so long. Especially because we had this initial conversation. I mean, maybe Mary could go back and look in the minutes, but I feel like we've been having this conversation for months around potentially this happening at Wisteria-Hearst, and nothing has happened. There's been no conversation until this
on the
week.
side of MIFA, on the side of MIFA has resulted in no conversation from MIFA.
Right. So Megan Sealer had reached out and said, here's the information I need, but then hadn't gotten that information. They had wanted to be placed in communication with the restorer directly so that they could really hear from the restorer to understand, was this really possible? Is it stable enough to be moved? How would it need to be installed? Even to know if the space really could work for the murals. And then that communication had not happened. So they were put in contact with the restorer, I believe, today. So it's really trying to just push it forward because there doesn't seem to be anything really holding it back other than them just needing to communicate. Mary?
Oh, I'm sorry, gotta get it down. I didn't have another question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, any more discussion? Okay. So let's move to a roll call vote for the motion to accept pushing them forward along this deadline. Alana Aubrey,
Yes.
Berninder Dalawal,
Yes.
Michael Falsetti,
Yes.
me, yes, Mary Moriarty,
Yes,
Maribel Ortiz,
Yes.
Israel Rivera,
Yes.
okay. All right. Okay, there's a couple more pieces just really quickly. I want to move to the fire truck because Thomas Shea is here. And I think Amy has a couple other things to share about other projects in the past. Mr. Shea, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's going on with the fire truck project?
Yes. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
So far, the project is going very, very well. Pretty much, I sent you pictures. Did you get those? The truck is pretty much disassembled at this point. This afternoon, my mechanic went up, and what's left on the truck is the dashboard, the firewall on the truck. There's a bunch of wiring in there that he's addressing right now. And after that wiring is done, it's going to go out to sandblasting, priming, and then conventional body work that's going to go on with it. The only little glitch that we came into was the running boards on the sides of the fire truck and the rear of the fire truck that was covered with aluminum. We got a price for that. It was $15,000 over the $130 you guys gave us. So I said that was insanity. So I spent $380 on wood, and I'm going to do it myself and save a ton of dough doing it that way. The body work is within budget at this point. The lettering, the chrome, the tires, and the running boards. As of right now, I have $3,800 left. And the reason I'm coming before you guys tonight is if I can get additional funding, possibly with cost overruns. And the reason I'm asking for it, just the logistics to get the money, to have approval from you, approval from the city council, and approval from the mayor, and then to get the funding. That truck is 32 feet long and it's 8 feet wide. And to bring that truck to a standstill at this point, sitting in a body shop, I don't think it's fair to the body shop owner for it to sit there, but I don't see anything that's going to be out of the ordinary. But like I said, it's a unique project. The first time I've done this, first time for you guys to have a vehicle. And I just don't want to.
I want to show these images.
Okay.
So
Okay.
these
See
are
where the steering wheel is right there? That's the last thing that's on. I see all the wires that's on the front of that, on the firewall. And on the opposite side, on the interior of the truck, there's a ton of wiring in there. They're addressing that now before they take that off. And once that's off, it'll go to steam cleaning, then the sandblasting. And you see the dashboard inside, the black part that's hanging down. There's quite a bit of wiring under there also that we want to address.
How much do you think the project is going to have as a cost overrun?
I don't know. I don't see anything right now, but like I said, it's a unique project. And if something comes up, like I said, I have $3,800 left. If it's more than that,
yeah,
we'll have to ask for additional funding. And if the funding is there and I don't spend it, it goes back into your general fund, just to have it on standby, if you will.
Yeah. So I think what the process would be, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, would be we would have to go to city council and ask for the award amount to be increased, and they would have to approve that. So I think the best way to do that would be if you had a sense of a cost overrun that was happening and you had some scope of it, right? Are we talking 5,000 over, 10,000 over, right? Like whatever that amount over it is. And then we could bring it to the city council. This is a very popular project. It's the whole fire department. I mean, this is the kind of project that often stuff can be done on the floor rather than it being pushed to subcommittee and then back to committee or back to the whole city council. Israel Rivera might have a different idea about that, but I think it's going to be possible for us to ask for more support from the city council as soon as we get a sense that it's really needed.
Okay. So
Israel Rivera, do you want to weigh in?
No, I mean, you're on point. There's nothing I can really add. I guess it's just getting all the information. The city council, I think, likes this project to the point that they would support it too as well. So you were on point with what you said. I don't want to just re-say what you said.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear that you think I'm not wrong there. Michael?
Madam Chairman, Tom, the remaining work, you have $3,800 left.
correct.
And and you described the work that needs to be done to finish it. In your mind's eye, what's giving you cause? Can you tell me at this point, or tell us at this point, what scope of work could arise out of nowhere and blindside you for $12,000 or for $15,000? What is it? Is it you're apprehensive about something? What is it that's causing you this apprehension?
When they do the sandblasting, if they patched up the fire truck, back in the day when that truck was in service, those guys, that was their fire truck. And anything that needs to be fixed on that fire truck, they fixed it themselves. So if you see some of the older pictures where the gold leafing wore off, they actually painted gold paint on there, and they fixed the fire trucks themselves. So if they did body work on that fire truck themselves, to the extent that there might be a cost overrun, we don't know that until the sandblasting is done, and to the extent of how much it's going to cost.
So it's not structurally or electrically or pneumatically the cause of your concern. It's the painting and the finish and the final finish is what's causing you the concern. Would that be correct?
Yes. As of now, I spoke to my mechanic about an hour ago, and he didn't have any surprises with the electrical system. So he's all set on that end.
Well, with that being said, would 15? I won't hold you to this. So I'm saying, would $15,000 as as something to be put in your back pocket and used as necessary. Would that be enough, given that it's the finish and the restoration? It's not really structural or something so dramatic that would be $25,000. It would be, would you think $15,000 would cover any hiccups that may come along the way that you're on the truck?
I think 15 grand would be plenty of money for that. I think 15 would be good.
Okay. Thank you. If things go well, do you have any time period that where it may be finished and arriving here at Holyoke?
May or June of next year.
Okay.
So the
Kind of
chrome,
hoping it might be ready for the parade.
Next one.
it won't be ready for this coming parade. It won't, because just the chrome alone to put the chrome back on, that's going to be at least a week and a half of work.
Yeah.
That's painstaking work, and you don't want to drop anything on a new paint and scratch it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Thomas, I think if you get through the sandblasting and then it's clear, like you can have a scope of work from the vendor saying it's going to cost X more than we thought it was going to. I think if you send it right back to us, we can vote on it and then send it to city council.
Okay, so leave everything alone away this for now, correct?
I'm sorry, I just missed that.
Just leave everything the way it is now for correct?
For now, yes, but as soon as you have a sense of what that overrun might be, come back to us and we'll move it as quickly as we can.
Okay, very good.
Thanks for giving us the heads up. And thank you for sending the photographs. Those were great.
And I will keep those coming for you. Each time we get progress, I'll send them.
Love it.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, do you want to quickly go through anything else that you want to share for other projects?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I know that the Holyoke merry-go-round people joined the last meeting, so you know that the extension was granted to them. Did somebody disappear? Oh, okay. And till 2023. And just wanted to mention that they have expended $8,929 so far for the removal of 2 horses for rehab. But I think that this was mentioned at the last meeting. Jackson Street Habitat for Humanity. This was the FY20 project for affordable housing. They expended their full 120,000, and that project is pretty much complete. But we got the news today that the deed rider, which is the affordable restriction, has been drafted for 117 Jackson Street. Alicia Zoller of Office of Community Development drafted it because it will include grant funding from CDBG, I forget what it is, as well as, what was it?
CDGB.
Yeah, as well as CPA funding. So that's really great because, we don't have to have an elaborate thing from Attorney Degnan. She did one for 117 Jackson Street that includes the 15-year restriction, which is what the CPC voted for. And then there will be a new one drafted eventually for 113 Jackson Street, which is the other new house. There was also a mortgage document of some sort that she sent us that I haven't gotten to look at. And then in terms of the—
And the CO is a certificate of occupancy.
Oh, that's right. There was also a certificate of occupancy that Amy Giroux sent us from Habitat. And then for the FY21 Scott Tower acquisition, the land acquisition, the deadline for that is really soon. It's supposed to be in a few days, September 30th of this year. What I got from Yoni is that the city and Kestrel Land Trust signed a purchase and sale agreement for the land transfer. So they're just waiting for the Kestrel attorney who will to send the new title deed for them to review and approve, or the attorney has to review and approve the title deed for that. So we're discussing how to take care of funding that, because it's a little different when it's a land acquisition. It's not just sending money to a vendor. A check needs to be, issued directly to the seller of the land. So we're discussing that by email and with the auditor. So hopefully we'll work that out soon. So that's exciting that that's moving along. And then it's too bad, I think Chris Baker left, but
No,
there's,
he's here.
I
you're here.
talk
Okay,
about the
great.
stained glass windows. Yeah.
Yeah, you might as well talk about that if you want.
Yeah. Happy to. So this is phase 4 of the stained glass window project. Obviously, I'm carrying on where Bob Parent left off on this. So the it's $80,000 from you all from the CPA. We got a $55,000 grant from Mass Historical. So, and they're likely going to give us an extra $20,000 on top of that, just because they had more money in the pool. And they didn't have a lot of applicants actually this year, so that benefited us.
ARPA funding.
Say it one more time.
I'm sure so many projects got ARPA funding that less went into the round.
Yeah. I have no idea what happened. Paul said it was like a very low application year. So
Well, that's great news.
Some of it. So that's good news that we're getting an extra 20. So currently the technical specs are getting reviewed from Mass Historical, and we just need to enter into a contract with them in order to. So I'm really just waiting on the state contract. But this will be for windows number 2 and 4. Those are 2 of the large decorative windows. And then because we have the additional money, there'll be some alternates that hopefully we can add on, which is for window 13, which I'm not sure exactly what that is. I think it's the front window and it's getting broken into the top part as one alternative and then the bottom portion as another alternative. So if we can only do a portion of it, we will, but we're hoping with this extra 20 that we can do the entire window 13.
Okay. So 2, 4, and 13. Okay. So, sorry, I'm just pulling up what phase 3 was, because phase 3 is where we pulled anything that was left down so that we would be able to create and store them for their future restoration.
They're all stored up in the they're in a storage room off of the main room on that floor of City Hall.
So how many are left then? As I guess
Actually, I guess if you
pulling up phase 3.
So
phase 3, we created windows 1, which was agriculture, 2, which was decorative, 4, which was decorative, and 5, which was the arts.
So I think there's just one large decorative window left. Does that sound right? And then there's some smaller, like window 13. Is this the rear lower lancets? Yeah, window 13 has essentially 4 small panels in it. It's almost like 4 windows.
Okay. So how many will then be left after this phase? Like, are we done? Or will
No, I think there's
was that too optimistic?
one large decorative window, and then I believe there's back windows that won't be done either.
Okay.
But it's not going to be complete even after phase 4.
So maybe one more phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amy, you had your hand up.
So you mentioned, I think, window 2 and window 4, and I know the contract with CPA was for either window 1 or 2. So I guess CPA funding will go towards window 2. And you talked about modifying the contract, but maybe you were talking about with MHC, not with CPA, right?
Yeah. So I was thinking that because there's now $75,000, I don't know if I'm able to share my screen real quick, just to show you which ones I'm talking about. This is window 2. And I think what the idea was to do one decorative window and then this is also a decorative window. So I'm not sure but we're doing 2 and 4. That was what was in the technical specs. And then this is window 13. So we'll get as much of this done as we can in this contract too.
When you say this contract though, do you mean the CPA contract? Because our contract is specifically for window 1 or 2.
Okay. So then we'd probably be doing, when I say this contract, I mean with whatever contractor. So that's going to be with all of the funding that we have. So I guess if we paid for window 2 out of the CPA funding, that would give us, so I guess we would, do you want me to change the scope of because yeah, that won't work if that has 1 and 2, but we're doing 2 and 4.
Yeah, it's really hard to change the contract now at this point with CPA, but I was just wanting to clarify that the funding you're talking about from MHC would be used for the other windows because the contract stipulates either window 1 or 2 located on the east side of the Holyoke City Hall building, and with the assistance of preservation services if needed. So it's not really like something that you can just add, just do other things beyond what's actually in the scope,
Gotcha. Okay, maybe we can talk offline about how to work that out.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think the goal is to use the funding appropriately, but as generously as possible to get the work done. So we can have that conversation about what the contract allows and then just go from there.
Okay. Yeah, because this was something that Bob set up before he left. So I wasn't in the selection process of which windows to do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, again, it's another project that the city council probably really supports, so that if there had to be an amendment to the contract, maybe it could be done. I don't know, but it might be tricky.
Okay. I mean, I guess it's just swapping out one window for another window.
Mm-hmm.
They all need to get done, so.
Totally. And I think also that's maybe, a lesson learned for us around something that we know is a multi-phase project where there's other matching funds that sort of make it so that maybe you don't want to name specifically which window or 2 you're doing if additional funding then really does necessitate a shift.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Awesome. Well, we'll be really excited to see the project be done, and not because I'm tired of looking at stained glass windows. They're lovely. I love that the project keeps coming back, but the 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial, I'm working on that word, of the city is next year. And it would be great if there was a way to have them done. No? All honest, stop dreaming, Meg. Oh, you're on.
Given what we just heard from the fire truck, the stained glass is such a labor-intensive art form, and those windows are massive. So who knows? I hope you're right, but who knows?
I'm trying to be optimistic, Alana. It would be so cool if we could have an unveiling in the ballroom as part of the sesquicentennial. All right, well, we'll see what we can make happen, right? All right. Okay, anything else, Amy, that you want to add before we move on to 22 projects?
Nope, nothing more.
Chris, anything else you want to add?
No, I'm going to take off.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so FY22 projects, the Miriam Miranda boulder and plaque was completed. It's really exciting. Amy can give some more details about all the craziness that went into pulling it off at the last minute, but it was done for the Stop the Violence basketball tournament, which was great. Had really good attendance. It was really good to see it happen again in our city. It did not happen during the pandemic year, and that's the only year that it's not happened since the death of their mother. So it was great to see the tournament happen again, and great to see the dedication of the plaque and the boulder. It is quite beautiful. Amy, if you want to explain a little bit about what happened at the end of the live Pulaski image?
I see that Tom is still here, and he was overseeing that, and everything I share is from him. So I don't know if Tom wants to just speak about it.
Yeah, sure. Hey,
I'm gonna put the image in the background once I find it.
My first day, I had the plaque on my desk, so that was the first real project thing that I was welcomed with. So the plaque was there. It was from Din Brothers, and we just had to find a stone. It's quite large. It's 20 inches by 24 inches. So finding a boulder or a stone was kind of a hard feat. I reached out to Kern Construction, and Scott had done has some ideas where you can maybe grab a rock like that size that would fit that plaque. So he came through in the clutch, right in like the bottom of the 9th inning, came in and got it, picked it up, did all the work, and then brought over, graded the ground, dropped it in, and it looked great. The family was really moved, so it definitely, hit those heartstrings there for that tournament. The tournament was a fun day. My first one being there, so it was good to see the involvement of the family and the community down that area for that basketball tournament. And mainly, what worked out real well was the stone was dropped. I think we put it down there that Wednesday, and that was that next Saturday at the end of August. I think it was August 27th. So it was kind of like the big unveiling of that. And then that basketball tournament was kind of just a little side piece on there. So it was a good day. And I'm glad that came out so nicely as it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It was very cool to see it come together. And the boulder is beautiful.
Yeah, did a good job picking it out for us. Yeah.
Okay. I want to move on to the other updates. So Wisteria Hearst, I think we heard last time, the painting is delayed until next fall. That's largely because they were still going through the process of figuring out how to find the right contractor who's fit all the specifications required for them as an historic building, and the Wisteria Hearst, right? So it's called Wisteria Hearst, and there's these great vines all over the mansion. How do you paint it without destroying this iconic thing that's part of the building? So they are working very strategically to figure out how to do the painting in the fall, when they can attempt to do the painting in a way that will not destroy the Wisteria Hearst and prevent it from growing back well the next year. So when they couldn't quickly make it happen this year, they just had to be patient and say, we have to wait and do it next fall, because that's when it's going to make the most sense for the building itself. Girls Inc. So the contract is now ready to circulate. So that's something that's exciting. And thank you, Amy, for drafting that and working with them to make sure that everyone felt good about it. And I have some photos that I want to show you of the work that they're doing right now. So the brickwork the masonry ended up being more extensive than I thought it would be. So if you're driving by anytime recently, you will see that they have dug these massive trenches out alongside the building as they've realized there's more decay underneath that dirt than they understood initially. So they've now dug this trench all the way around all of the sides of the building, and they're uncovering some significant issues underneath. So that is something that they're working on now. So you can see the corner of this building here, and then you can also see another picture of the trench because over time, the soil had just built up around the brick. And so it was possible to obscure some of the issues that were underneath.
With the exception of, if there's a basement in this building, they would have been able to see the level of moisture. I'm just looking at this because I had my house dug out like this, the whole thing. So it was almost like my house looked like it was in a grave. And they basically had to, retar the entire foundation of my house, which was, for my house was, a few $1,000s, but I'd be curious to hear how much that's going to cost them if that is in fact what they need to do, is to sort of shore up the foundation of the building.
Yeah, I have Suzanne Parker and I had a conversation just about setting up a time to check in, and then I think her plan is to come to our next meeting to update us on how it's going and what the scope of that work looks like. But I just wanted to give you a sense of it. Okay. Is there anything else, Amy, about FY22 projects that you want to share? Or anyone else have anything else that they want to share if they've been in contact with the project that they're connected to?
I have nothing more to share. Just letting you know that Israel Rivera left, but I think we still have a quorum here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I want to move to 4. MHC no longer required by legal department to approve property restrictions. So Initially, when we talked to Assistant City Solicitor Kathy Degnan, she felt that it was really important for us to approve all of our property restrictions through the Mass Historic Commission. And so we started going through that process. Yes, I mean preservation restrictions. Did I misspeak, Amy?
You said property, just wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
preservation restrictions.
Yeah, the historic
you.
preservation restriction. Yeah.
So we did that with Chestnut Street. So we developed the restriction with both parties, the city and Chestnut Street VOC, and we sent it to Mass Historic. We were told that it would take around 6 weeks to hear back. Way longer than that, we heard back with, we'd like the following language pieces to shift. So those language changes were made. It was resent back out. Then we heard again. One of the problems is that every time you send back to Mass Historic, it's not like you have a case manager and it goes to one person and it sticks with them forever. When you send it back, it's reviewed again by a totally different person who can have a totally different lens. And so the second person that reviewed it said, oh, language is fine, but we don't like the photographs. The photographs are, we want different kinds of photographs. Here's an explanation of the types of photographs that we want. Can you have the applicant retake all the photographs and send them to us? So the applicant did that. And we've just been waiting. It's been 7 months. Right. So there's been right, not in just one response, right? There was like 2 kind of rounds of feedback in there. But in the end, it's 7 months later and we still don't have an approved preservation restriction. So as part of that frustration, Kathleen Degnan reached out to a number of folks, did some research, and decided that the legal department would not require MHC to approve preservation restrictions moving forward. Oh, Amy is saying that she's not sure the photographs were then taken. Well, partly because it seems like a really big undue burden on the applicant.
Right.
So
is it okay if I just put
Sure.
in something just that, what she's saying is that we could go back to the original plan, which was for a term limited restriction, which is not in perpetuity. This is not an acquisition. When it's an acquisition, either of a historical property or, or of open space, you're required to have, a restriction in perpetuity. But since this is not an acquisition by the city, and it's a term limited restriction, it could simply be recorded with the Registry of Deeds, which would be a much simpler process and wouldn't slow things down endlessly like this.
So our legal department would still have to approve, but it would move a lot faster.
Yeah, I guess the hope would be that that maybe the attorney for example, Chestnut Street could, well, in their case, it would be pretty simple because they could use what they have. But for a new project, that they could the applicant's attorney maybe could look at a sample, which I could provide, and draft this. A lot of the information comes right from MACRIS, the historical record on the different properties. And then maybe the subcommittee could review it just like they do with contracts, and it could be recorded with the Registry of Deeds at the expense of the applicant.
And the elegant piece that I like that we're now starting to establish is the nice thing about registering at the property of you said the property of deeds?
The Registry of Deeds.
Registry of Deeds. Sorry, I'm losing my words. This is what happens when I spend a long work day. Anytime a building permit is being pulled, they can see it's flagged that there is a restriction on the property, and the restriction will effectively say this has to go to the Historic Commission for this work to be approved before the permit can be approved. So it would allow the Historic Commission, which holds the preservation restriction, to have a very clear communication line from a project work being proposed to then the building department saying, well, we can't approve your permit until the Historic Commission has approved the work. Yeah, Amy?
Yeah, and I think that I think there's some changeover in staff at the building department, as there is, been throughout the city. I would want to make sure that they had a copy of the Registry of Deeds, and they, that I had a conversation with them about it, because I don't really know how their process works. I mean, I'm assuming that it would definitely be flagged since it's recorded with the Registry of Deeds, but I would make sure I talk to them and say, this is what's going on. So we're all on the same page.
Amy, this makes me wonder if someone from the building department could come to one of our meetings.
Well, I think right now they're looking for a new person for the building department. That's the problem. I think it's a vacant position.
Okay. Well, as soon as it's not vacant, maybe we can start moving forward with
Yeah, I'll
contact.
make a
You
note
could
of that.
contact them, and we could invite them in to make sure that
Yeah.
we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I could try to find out about that. Yeah.
Fernando?
Just a question. What department are they're looking for in building department? Because I thought what they was covered. They're still looking for building inspector, or the code is still there, right?
I'm not exactly sure. I think which one it was. I'd have to go back to my email to see.
I don't think Damien is leaving. I think it's a separate position.
Okay.
That's my understanding. I think
We're adding a
the
position.
Mayor recently posted something about an assistant buildings commission or whatever, but I think that's what it is. But I could be wrong, but I don't think he's leaving just yet.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to move to, was there any more questions or discussion on that before we move to the next agenda item? Okay. So budget update. Two things to this. One, Andrew McMahon, who was chair of the committee, right, was here from the very beginning, who then did a lot of work for us over the years to set up different budgetary tracking tools. And I think everyone has the sense of this, is just simply too busy to continue supporting us. He has taken on a lot in both of his roles for the National Guard, as well as in his private industry job. And he is in a place where he's just not really able to continue supporting us. So the work that he did and submitted for this summer is the last work he's going to submit for. So while he is supporting in some small ways at this point, it is not something that he's going to charge for, and he's looking actively for us to transition out of his support. So Amy and I talked about her bringing this up at the meetings that she has for the there's a statewide group of CPA staffers that meet on Zoom regularly. So we talked about her bringing it up there and seeing if somebody else from another committee is looking for a side hustle, and we could effectively hire them on as a consultant to do a certain amount of work every year. CPA budgeting is very complicated. There's a lot in terms of how funding is encumbered, and also the fact that some money has to be reserved in each category every year and then tracked in a really specific way over time as projects maybe come in under budget, or all of that has to be taken into account. So while Amy thankfully has fully taken on contract development and has started to take on more and more of the budgeting piece, there's still a piece there that needs support as Amy sort of transitioning, and I think honestly Amy getting stronger and stronger in budgetary stuff. So we're actively going to be looking for a new person to support. Hopefully we can find someone who is connected to another CPA who is really familiar with CPA tracking, right? Who can support us in this work. So we have a very loose budgetary update, which is that we know that we have $800,000 this year. It may be more, but there is some detailed tracking that needs to be done in order for us to know if we have more. We know that we have at least $800,000 to spend for this year's fiscal cycle for the FY23 projects. And any of you, if you know someone who has experience in municipal finance, if you want to reach out, we are actively looking for someone. Gurninder?
Just a question. Why we don't involve somebody like students who's doing accounting or law, so in future they could be like working with the city, involving teens with us, like younger, 20 to 25 years old. The kids are old schools. Just an idea.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And if anyone can think of anyone that we should connect with, please let me know. Or let me Amy know, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 6 is the updated website and video rollout. So we sort of pushed things back. Part of it was just the amount of time that it's taken to update the language on the website and get it up to speed, and also add in the information on FY21 and FY22 projects before the new website goes live. But we're now targeting like a mid-October. The new website would go live, maybe earlier, but I'm trying to be realistic. And we'll also start rolling out the videos that we had made for CPA on various Facebook pages and the city page, as well as our web page. So like one video every 4 or 5 days over the course of the 6 videos. I want to show you what the new website's going to look like. Okay, and you'll notice there's a grid sort of on the right hand of the screen, and that's just an editing tool, because I'm showing it to you from an editor's perspective, because the website is not fully live yet. All right, so actually, let me bring this up. So kind of looking at our current website versus the old one. So here's our current website, and effectively there's a lot of information front-loaded for applicants on the first page, and then underneath there's links for each project kind of year. We had FY19 and FY20 on our page, and then some links up here that kind of gave information about us, who's on our committee, right, our names here, how to apply, and then another way to kind of get at some of the projects, including our preservation plan. So this page in general was really geared towards applicants, right? So the new page is geared more towards the taxpayer. It's more geared towards the person who's trying to understand more about our committee and the work that we've done in the city. Not that it doesn't support applicants, it does, but it's not, its audience is shifted a little bit. So the initial piece is just the video that is the very basics, the Q&A video, right? What is CPA? What are the funding categories? Who can apply for CPA? So there's that video there. Over here, we have a document that's just in the news. So you click on that, it'll bring you to links to different news articles, right? We're in the news often, actually. All right, if you're not seeing those articles, like it's pretty constant. Every time that we do something, it's very frequently put in the news somewhere, whether on Mass Live or in the Republican or in the Gazette or in the Sun. So all those links are gonna go here on this page. Announcements will go here. So anything that's really specific to, hey, historic applicants, your deadline's coming up, those applicants, those announcements live here. Over here is forms and documents. The main menu over here gives you the links to each project page, application information, and then about information. And down here is a project's map. So when folks hover over it, they'll be able to then access information about each of our projects, which pop up in the sidebar with a photograph and then a description below of the project. Initially, when I was working on the map, when I was talking to the web designer, we did these layers based on year, like 2019, 2020, etc. And then I realized, let's see if I can find the map. One of the issues with doing that is that we have so many multi-year projects. I'm gonna bring you to the editor's page for this. So we have so many projects that are multi-year that it doesn't actually make sense to code them by year in a lot of senses, because you have a project that was phase 1 in 1 year and phase 2 in the next, and then where do you put it, right? When really it lives in multiple years. So instead, my next step before we go live is to go back in and rename the layers. I'm going to do it by category. So historic, open space and rec, and affordable housing. And that way the 3 colors will just be the categories. And that way, if you have a project like Wisteria Hearst, electric was 2 years, right? The ballroom's 4 years. So that way it's easy for folks to understand how these projects often too are multi-year. Like a lot of times we're doing a project not just once, but we're supporting it all the way.
I think that's great.
I think it's pretty amazing. And you keep saying, I am going to do such and such. Are you doing this, Megan?
So Amy's got a lot. Amy can explain what she does. Amy's got a lot just between like invoices, requisition orders, all the communication. Like I didn't even touch the eligibility form. She's going to go over that next. And so because she was like fully into all of that, I did the work of drafting this piece, and then Amy went in and helped me to edit it. So we're pulling it together, and it's gonna look really good, I think, in the end. I'm excited about it, and I feel good about the website and the video sort of coming together as part of the website and the map. I feel good about that.
Yeah, a lot of the text though was taken from the old website, which I created and developed. So and then it's sort of been refashioned. Yeah.
Well, you two are doing a great job. Thank you.
So it's coming together. I'm excited about it. And Joanne Pinatel is the graphic designer who's been working with us, and she's been really good at listening to what we want and then designing stuff that looks, I think, really fresh. Looks really good. Okay. Historic eligibility review. Amy, what's the best way to do this? Do you want to just go through each of the projects?
Simply go through the historic, because as people may remember, Meg and Paula and I worked on creating like a different process for the historical applicants so that it would come in, they would submit their eligibility forms earlier, so there'd be more time for them to prepare documents for review by the commission. So they've already submitted their eligibility forms, and I sent you all the link. I could just go through and say what each one is and whether it's private or public. And also just tell you overall, there were, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that came in, but only one at this point is not eligible. And the one that I'll just say that is not eligible currently is the one for the John T. Lynch gravestone restoration from Mike Sullivan, because there was no letter of consent from the owner of the property, which, I did ask Mike for, and I, didn't hear back from him on that. So at this point, that's, not eligible. So the other ones that we got, there were only 2 city projects. One is Wisteria Hearst Museum for an engineering study, and remaining funds for the chimney and wallpaper restoration. So that is probably going to be a $95,000 request. And then the other city project is the City Hall clerk basement document restoration. So this is for a historic resource, documents that are just kind of not stored properly. And that will that's from the city clerk, Brenna McGee and Olivia Moselle, potentially for $9,800. So it'd be under 10,000 to pack out the end. I wrote to pack out inventory, 30 plus journals stored in the City Hall basement for 50 to 100 years, because dehumidification, dry cleaning, and deodorization and reboxing, those are my notes. So yeah, to dehumidify them and, treat them better, fix up the, their situation. So then the other ones I have are, and I should mention that one that I just mentioned, the City Hall basement documents, like many of these projects, they need to seek the letter of historic significance, because that resource, it's not a building, so it's not on the state register. So they need to seek that letter of historic significance from the Historical Commission. So the other ones are 120 Front Street, which is
for just a second, Amy. So I just wanted to that the documents in the city hall are it says from the clerk's office,
Right.
the school
In the
department,
base.
and Popper's journals dating back to the 1890s to the 1960s. So it's a really broad collection of papers.
So do we know, does the city actually have an archivist, like an actual trained archivist to go through? I mean, it's one thing to uncover these boxes and boxes, but then how to file them, how to archive them appropriately, handle 150-year-old materials, things like that.
I know that Eileen Crosby, at the, you said Crosby?
Yes, Crosby.
Okay. I know Eileen Crosby at the Holyoke Library, who works in the history room, was part of this process of looking at those documents.
Whether she's hired to actually work on this project is another question.
Right. So also a question, for them, for example, might be asking, is this something that will sort of be done, with staffing as it currently exists, but expanded hours as a side project, or is this something that goes out to, request for proposal and brings in an outside firm? The sense that I'm getting is that it would be an outside firm because folks are just really understaffed and overburdened. And so the goal would be to use this funding for an outside firm to do the work. But that's a question that we can ask the applicant. These are just eligibility forms. And so it gives us a sense of what they're going to do. We then respond with questions sometimes or guidance, and then they build out, fully developed applications. They'll present in the public meetings in January.
Hmm.
Yeah, and one thing I've made very clear to the applicants is that this is the preliminary phase of eligibility, because as we learned from Girls Inc., establishing eligibility can be complicated. So, without knowing all the details of the work, we can't fully say until we know them. But I can tell them at this stage, based on what we know, you're eligible.
So can I ask a question though? And sorry if I'm kind of just being the annoying newbie here.
Ask away.
With regard to the ticket booth, we did not approve from the Historic Commission. The issue that we had with that was that the owner of so it was the guy from Victory Theater who doesn't own the Mount Tom ticket booth.
We got a letter
I don't remember
today.
specifically what it was, but the reason that we basically did not approve or give it historic significance was because he wants to put a similar to the vans that you can drive around during election season. He wants to put like a marquee on this ticket booth from Mount Tom at Victory Theater. And if I recall correctly, the commission did not, we basically said that that's not of historic significance. So I'm just kind of following along, Amy, with what you're saying, that this is just the initial phase. But if Paula was part of that conversation, did she indicate anything to that effect around it?
Yeah, she's aware of this, and they have been told what the process is for seeking that letter. It's just that I couldn't say to them, no, you can't try again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then this is just me learning how things work.
And we did get a letter of consent from the owner, at least, saying that he agrees to allow them to apply for funding.
Okay.
Also, just because something is found eligible doesn't mean that we will end up voting to support it. Right.
Okay.
So that's the other layer here. This is technically underneath the legislation. Your project could be eligible. But as we then develop the scope of work, you go to the Historic Commission, it may be that then it's not found eligible under its current scope of work or its current, current level of ownership. Or
even if the Historic Commission does give them a letter of historic significance, it's still up to the CPC to decide, balancing, comparing to other projects, whether this should be funded.
So Amy, do you want to talk a little bit more about the ticket booth and what the ticket booth is? And then I want to ask the committee if we want to entertain the application.
Okay.
put in the agenda, vote concerning hearing MIFA's application. So maybe give us an overview of that, and then I want to ask the committee what we feel about entertaining the application.
Okay, well, I'll just, I mean, I tried to get more details from them about what will really be done because the project summary is just sort of vague. You know, it says Holyoke Mountain Park is a world famous memory of the city's reputation for entertainment and fun, etc. But it seems to me that the money would go towards restoring the ticket booth as well as the, you know, the mobile platform for it, and the lighting. I can't really remember all those details because it was in a bunch of emails, but I was trying to get, you know, more specific information. But they will definitely have to lay that out, I think, for the historical commission. Let's see. They said we want to return it to service in Holyoke. The ticket booth was the gateway to the historic amusement park and provided patrons with the tickets to Great Adventure. The park is gone, but there are plenty of new venues that provide entertainment in downtown Holyoke. Bring on the lights and let people know what's happening and where. The restored ticket booth can become a movable attraction to sell tickets once again and to announce events. MIFA proposes to fully restore the ticket booth, rehabilitate it, and make it mobile as a portable way to advertise and sell tickets to events around the city. With colored lights, playing the restored ticket booth will be a message of joy wherever it goes.
So is your understanding that it's possible to use CPA funding for the platform? Because my first read would be not at all.
I don't think that's not historic rehabilitation. You know, that's adding something that was never part of the ticket booth, you know?
Right. So my perception would be our communication back, even if we entertained the application, would be to say only the ticket booth, because the mobile platform itself is in no way covered by CPA funding.
Right. But then if money only went towards restoring the ticket booth and it wasn't accessible to the public, there'd be that issue. So
I think that they would have to still create the mobile platform. I just don't think that we can require, right, that it is made accessible. They would have to figure out how to make it accessible.
If they had the funding, yeah.
But we can't provide the funding for something that's not eligible for CPA. My biggest question about this project is that we still have this ongoing application, you know, being turned into a contract currently from MIFA already. So this is something that we don't have as a policy anywhere. So we don't have as policy, you know, if you have an outstanding project, you can't apply for more funding for a different project. And I'm wondering if we should. I don't know, but I think that it's worth talking about and seeing what we think about having a policy around that.
Okay, can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
All right, first, I think that we have to follow the pattern of application for all of the applications.
Yep.
And I don't think, it seems like we're going over one of the applications already tonight. I understand that there are some loose ends that you're looking for some general answers to, but I think maybe that's what we need to do is figure out from what you have done so far, are there overarching questions that we need to answer? Otherwise, I think we're being almost prejudiced when we look at one item or another item separately tonight.
So the goal is to go through all of them one by one and to name if there's any issues with eligibility. There is an issue of eligibility with this application in terms of the mobile platform being mentioned. So when we communicate back to them, your project is eligible, it's like with a asterisk, right? A part of this feels eligible, this other piece isn't. And the piece I'm bringing up now is I think the project's great. I can't wait to see the Victory Theater fully restored, but we've never had it happen before where a project was outstanding and then another application came on top of that. It's just never happened before. And so since it's happening for the first time, I'm wondering how the committee feels about that, right? Or do we want to have a policy where we say, applicants, if you already have a project that's ongoing with us that hasn't been fully executed, we don't think that we should be entertaining more applications for other projects. Absolutely, as a committee, we could discuss that and then say, yeah, actually, that's fine. But I wanted to bring it up because it's never come up before.
Well, it seems to me like, I mean, when I first sat in on a commission meeting, and it was the first time around that the person from the Victory Theater came in, you know, I began to hear more about, wow, they're always asking for more money. And, you know, the sort of sense is, where are the results? And so one of the questions that I'd like to ask is there any sort of time frame to allow for work to be done, like realistic? So could be a 3-year time frame, or it could be a 6-month time frame. But you know, I'm just curious, if we have the same people applying over and over again, you know, is there a way to put a time restriction on the use of that money, so we don't have concerns similar to Girls Inc., where people are suddenly going back and being like, well, wait a second, it's not for that, it's for this. And
so in our initial round with MIFA, this was back in FY19, they were given funding for their sconces. It was contingent on the project being shovel ready to go. So we did put a deadline on the funding, and the deadline came and the deadline went, and the funding was returned to us. So when they went to us the next year and asked for funding for the murals, that's why we were attempting to create a way for the murals to be, you know, done now, right? Like, not waiting for the entire project to be done. Was there a way for them to be restored in the moment and then stored, but also, I mean, at the time, shown in the city, right? The goal was they would be shown in it fully in a municipal building, so that it sort of wasn't really contingent on the building getting to that full threshold, because they have so much funding and they can't access any of it until they have all of it, right? We're talking about a project that's raised millions and millions of dollars, but there's still a huge gap. So I don't want to minimize the amount that they've raised. It's really been astronomical, and it's been a lot of good work for the city. But the murals project then became complicated when we realized we couldn't fully restore it and install it in a monument, or a municipal building rather, in the city, because some of the panels were too fragile. And so then it became, well, maybe we change the scope of work. We found a way to, you know, temporarily have a panel on display with exhibitionary text, or, you know, with a exhibit text, and the rest is stored until the building is completed. And we have to go back to city council to see if they will accept that. I think the ticket booth is them thinking, well, what else could we do that's like that? That's not contingent on the building being completed. That could be its own standalone project that would still move our project forward, be a tool that they could use in fundraising to get awareness in the city of this project they're working on, and also preserve something that's historic. Because you're right, they very much want to see this project come to fruition, but the timeline is foggy, right? Their hope is always as soon as possible, but they haven't found the funding pathway yet, right? So even though they've raised, you know, tens of millions of dollars, there's still
Seems like an ARPA possibility too, to be honest. I mean, if we look at how broadly that money is being used,
there may be a pathway that opens, right? At some point, that's what you would hope. It just hasn't fully opened and become clear yet. Gurninder, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Victory Theater, I don't know how much they raise, or if you guys fund them money, because I'm hearing, if I go back around 2010, maybe 8, since I don't see anything like progress going on there.
So
And
they've secured the envelope in some key ways, and they've demolished a building in the back that they had to in order to create space for construction, as well as eventually parking. So they did that. The rest of it, they can't access. That was just done out of their own privately raised donations. Everything else that they have, from foundations, grants, the state, all of it is contingent on everything being raised. So even if they have $20+ million, they're still waiting on the gap to be completed so that they can do anything. Because all the funding is contingent on 100% funding. So it's tricky. I understand why people in the city are frustrated because they've been hearing them raise money for years and then nothing has, there's a visual in terms of them being able to see it. I think that's partly why they're looking for the ticket booth to be done. It's another visual to show we are doing things, like we do exist, we are making progress, because effectively, until they have all of it, they're prohibited from doing any of it.
Same thing if you give them funding from the ticket booth and you ask them to mobilize from their own funding, and you give them funding and then they restore the ticket booth and then they don't come up with the funding for the mobilize, and the money sits there. So you gotta have a positive and negative thing both sides. Till same thing, they if they raise millions and millions of dollars, but it could be done at least 25% to the building, so that people can see something going on. That's me, that's my opinion.
Yeah. I think from their perspective, it's hard to start when you don't have the funding to finish, right? Hard to find contractors who are willing to start, not knowing if they're going to be able to finish. But anyway, I know that there's a number of us who are new in the committee and we're learning about MIFA, and I think it's helpful to talk about the history of how we've interacted with them as a committee over time. But I want to go back to the wider question, which would apply to any applicant, which is, are we okay entertaining a secondary application from somebody when they still have an ongoing project with us? Because if that's okay, then we say back to them, great, we're good to go. Give us your application and we will have this detailed debate when it comes to the presentations and then the final applications turned in.
I think should be one application per person, one organization, not two. That's what I think. That's my opinion.
It would apply to everyone, right? So we have to think about that. I don't want us to have a policy that is only applying to one person. That's right, to your point, right?
Madam Chairman, why don't we just go on a case-by-case basis? We could be here all night. Just go on a case-by-case basis and judge the merits of both parties. And what is the ultimate goal of both parties? They're not mutually exclusive. I don't think we should make a blanket policy this evening on such a matter.
That's great, Michael.
On a case basis.
So that's what I'm asking, Michael. So your answer is no. I don't want to have a policy. I just want to hear that from everybody, right?
Just go on a case-by-case basis.
We feel okay going by a case-by-case basis. Your answer is yes.
No, my exact is no policy. Examine both on their merits.
Right. I hear you. Good. Thank you. I'd love to know where other people are.
I agree with Michael.
Okay. Amy?
I just wanted to say that, of course, there are some projects that an applicant has more than one, for example, the conservation department and the parks department, et cetera. But those projects have moved forward. They have contracts that are executed and, there's activity. So I think that's the distinction between that and this. That's all.
And if you need to say, hang your hat on one particular aspect of it, the shovel ready aspect is just not there. It's just not all together. So yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Alana
I agree, Michael.
and Maribel.
I agree with Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, it does feel to me that there may be some individual applicants that kind of see where things are headed and will just keep at it. And in this particular case, we all have the sort of history to see right in front of us, where as like the conservation, like you said, Amy and Mary, yeah, I do think it may end up looking at things individually, even if those individual applicants may feel like they're being, highlighted more so than any other applicant. But I think a case by case probably does make sense too.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page.
But
right.
Also, I think if someone if they start a project that it doesn't go, move forward, and then they want to bring another project, we need to look at that too.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Amy, can you go over the 120 Front Street project?
Yeah. see. So this is a private owner of 120 Front Street. You know, it's not on the historic register. As I said, I need to seek for the letter of significance. His name is Edward Owen. And it's, let's see, it's located across from Lyman Terrace and down the street from City Hall. Let's see, it currently has tenants that are diverse with a cabinet maker, a distiller, a brewer, a photographer, a beekeeper, a roofer, two brothers that are hobbyists, and a business called AOK, which he owns. And it would involve, let's see, he'd like to improve the property by adding where windows were removed. So adding windows that are missing. As you can see, by a previous owner and replacing windows that are still on the property. The project would improve the aesthetics of the property and also make the property more marketable for business that could help to serve the people and businesses in the area of the property. And I think he said overall 4 windows in the front that are bricked in. And then 6 in the back and 3 on the side. He kind of was changing it as we were communicating. And then the potential ask would be $62,000.
Okay. Can you go over Wisteria Hearst?
Yeah, I was just going to go through them in order. If that's okay. Yeah.
Madam Chairman, I have to interrupt. I have to go.
Okay.
No more votes are necessary, I take it this evening.
And the rest of the meeting is just going over all the eligibility applications.
But you won't have a quorum, I don't think. 1, 2, 3.
We're not going to vote on anything, are we?
5. No, we have 5. If Michael,
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bye, Michael.
Okay, so just quickly, so Wisteria Hearst, 238 Cabot Street. This is preservation planning and damage restoration at Wisteria Hearst. I think I already talked about this. This was the one that it would fund a full engineering survey of the Wisteria Hearst main house and create specifications for the foundation work and chimney rebuilding. Once the study is completed, remaining funds will be used to restore the one chimney with the most immediate needs, as well as restoring the damaged wallpaper from the leaking chimney. Without this, the room and the historic wallpaper will continue deteriorating and cause damage to the building. And they're probably going to ask for $95,000. I mean, there's more stuff they have here about the history of it, but I don't know how much more detail you want me to say there about that.
That's good.
Can I go to the next one? Okay. So then Mount Tom Engine House. This is a private owner at 5 North Canal Street in Holyoke. Paul David McBride and co-applicant Linda Drury. And this is a full restoration of the exterior to include significant masonry work, windows and doors. Existing masonry includes a mix of original and modern materials with significant differences in characteristics, causing significant spalling that is leading to increasing structural weaknesses. In many areas, the more recent pointing has been found to be cosmetic at less than 1/8 of an inch and is flaking. The proposed work will involve technically correct pointing with structurally appropriate mortar, repair of fractured stone and brickwork, reconstruction, replacement and or adaptation of vintage appearing, although I told him that that wouldn't be really, it would have to be repairing what is rather than recreating. Doors and windows where possible. A structural engineer will be contracted to determine the work that needs to be done.
And this is
So this Mount Tom Engine House was completed in 1887.
Amy, is this a privately owned building?
Yes.
Okay.
From what I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, the applicant is the owner, Paul David McBride.
Okay.
So he has more information, but it's all on the eligibility form that I sent everyone. I could share with you, or I could keep going because I know it's getting late.
Yeah, I think it's okay to keep going. I just want everyone to have a snapshot of everything.
Yeah, and then another private owner, the BBCC Steeple Restoration, which stands for the Bethlehem Baptist Community Church. The purpose of this project is to repair, restore, and return the steeple of the church building to as close as possible its original form. By the way, it's located at 304 Elm Street. we will be using modern materials where necessary. I'm not sure if that's okay, but this is, while maintaining the original intent, as this is a historical building, the building was built around, well, of course, while necessary, yeah, they would have to. The building was built around 1894 and is in the Gothic Revival style. It is one of only a few churches, buildings of this style in the area. And so they also need to seek that letter of historic significance, even though, it's in the MACRIS file, Mass Historic file. That doesn't mean that it's not in the state register. So, and their potential ask is $32,407.
Do you want to talk about the anti-aid amendment?
Okay, well, all right, just briefly, there was somebody in the town of Acton who challenged the CPA there, that award that went towards a church. And they won the lawsuit, and that then the anti-aid amendment was written, and basically, let's see if I can remember, says that it comes down to that you can't just, give money to some private institution unless there's some benefit to the public. And I think, Meg, you knew a little bit more about that specific case, didn't you?
I think that the cases that have gone through are ones that are very much about churches that maybe do not have a lot of, like, for example, the North Church in Boston got CPA funding and nobody questioned that because it's a tourist attraction, right? It's like this iconic thing for the city. And so because it has that nature, nobody questioned CPA funding to restore the steeple of the church that was like, 1 by 2 or, 1 by land, 2 by sea, Paul Revere's ride, right? Nobody was like, that seems like you're aiding a religious institution. Everyone viewed it as a tourist attraction. But it's unclear exactly where that line is between where a building is historic versus where you are aiding a religious congregation. It's just something that we have to be very aware of as we're processing that application. It was Attorney Degnan who said that in that case, they had this church that got funding through CPA in Acton said that it was going towards, somehow it would help advance their ministry. So help them to, so that was partially it might've been their language that they used. Obviously the steeple of a church, a historic church is important and is a value to, the history of Holyoke, or it can be. So it's not out of the question, but yeah, it just has to be done carefully. And I already talked about the basement document restoration project. Mm-hmm. And after that, there's the Wright building, Wright block restoration. This is another private owner, 106, 120 High Street. The owner is Vadim Tolchinsky, that's how you pronounce it. And this is a potential ask of $180,000. This was formerly the Wernick Furniture Building. It's a combination of 4 individual buildings, each built in the 1870s in the beautiful Italianate style, neglected and abandoned for decades. We're working hard to rebuild and restore it to its former luster. The final product will honor the original building's mixed-use nature. Let's see. And I think this one involves windows too, but I'm not sure. I need to look again. It says restoration of windows, brickwork, exterior cladding, parapet flashing. Yeah. This constitutes substantial restoration, not simply maintenance. Yeah. Oh, and actually this one is on the historic register, so they don't have to seek a letter of historic significance. So sorry if I said that all of them need to. That's not true. Wisteria Hearst doesn't need to, obviously, and this one, this applicant doesn't have to seek that letter. They're already eligible. Yeah, so I think I've gone through all of them. Did you go over the Lynchstone? Oh, well, okay. That one is about, that's the one that isn't eligible because we don't have any letter saying that the applicant was Mike Sullivan, but the owner is St. Jerome Cemetery. And Mike Sullivan was, informed that he needed a letter. And it says right on the eligibility form, does the applicant have site control or written consent of the property owner to submit an application?
and we don't have that. And even though I gave more time for that, I also tried to get more information because we don't have a potential ask or any detail, but it's to clean the gravestone of John T. Lynch, who was important. But let me see if what I have down here about that, because I did print this out. Yeah, it's to clean the gravestone of John T. Lynch, and I don't have in front of me, sorry, but he was obviously he was an important figure to the Holyoke Fire Department, the chief of the Holyoke Fire Department. So yeah, that's the story with that one.
So effectively, out of everything that was proposed, has everything been found historic except for the gravestone, which is just waiting on the letter from St. Jerome's?
Well, when you say everything historic, nothing, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, I did go over this with attorney Kathleen Degnan, and, we discussed together, and basically, she agreed to say that we can say at this point, these projects, with the exception of the John T. Lynch, which doesn't have that letter, appear to be all the projects, besides, we know Wisteria Hearst and the High Street right block are definitely eligible, right? Because they are on the State Register of Historic Places. The other ones appear to be eligible based on the information we have, if they can secure that letter of historic significance from the Historical Commission.
Okay. So the next step is that applicants will develop a presentation that they bring to the October Historic Commission meeting to share their scope of work if they need to ask for a letter of significance.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to mention is that the way that this is happening with, applicant, I guess all the applications will still come in at the same time. So you'll still be able to weigh, like when you're deciding on whether to award money or recommend money for historic projects, you'll still see other non-historic projects. It just seemed like that was important,
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you won't even know what else was to come.
Right. And I put it in the chat. So like the historic, we know we'll have $800,000 for this year. The historic asks are already 1.3 million.
Yeah, one of them
and that's before open space and rec, and that's before affordable housing. Applicants submit their eligibility forms. When are those due, Amy? The eligibility,
what due?
The eligibility forms for the other two categories.
I don't have that in front of me, but I think I'm going to, I think my plan was to put it out by the end of this month and have it due by the end of October.
Okay. So another 4 weeks-ish, right? So by the November meeting, we'll have a sense of what the eligibility forms are for the other projects. Yeah. But so, and the $1.3 million in ask so far for historic includes $600,000 from one applicant.
Right. I just wanted to, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I just wanted to say that I did let him know, that applicant, give him more of an idea of how much money we're working with. And he said, oh, okay, this will be adjusted, in their application. Because I said they could try to submit it as phases or something like that,
Yep. Okay. Any other concerns, questions, anything about the eligibility application so far? Mary, and then Gurninder.
Well, this is more about, it's not really purely eligibility, but it would come up when you're talking to applicants. I'm wondering how you're going to put a historic preservation restriction on the $9,800 for the documents. How are you going to put one on for the documents?
I don't think you can do that.
So in general, we've taken it as a case-by-case basis, but for the merry-go-round, because it was only $24,000, we did not require them to have a restriction because it was a lower amount of money. So okay. I think we just have to take that as a case-by-case basis, that in general, a project under $30,000, we haven't required a preservation restriction.
Okay.
Oh, and also they're not required for city projects anyway. So
right. That's true. And this is a
Oh,
project.
oh, okay, okay, good.
Good point, Amy. Okay, Gurninder?
Just a question, learning because I'm new. CPA does for private building, the what we would just get those applications.
Yes, although we haven't had much luck. And the reason why is because we do require a preservation restriction. And so, for example, the 90 Ray Street, I think it was 90 Ray Street, the Armor and Company building that's currently being refurbished right now. If you drive by, you'll see it in action. It's near the Cubit. The Luziaragas had come to us. We had, said that we could award them $90,000 for the work on the facade, but it came with a preservation restriction. And although we went through the entire process, by the time they got to actual work on the property, they actually did decide they needed to make some significant changes to the exterior of the building in order to make their restaurant flow work inside. And when they came to us asking for the ability to make those changes, it was denied. And so as a result, they decided to walk away from the funding. So I think that, part of our reason for putting historic earlier this year, and that's the first time we've done that, is to create more space for conversations with those applicants so that we can make sure they understand what it means. That if you are a private company or a private citizen, is asking for this funding for a privately owned building, that does come with a preservation restriction. They have to be willing to accept the restriction, or in good conscience, we can't just give them taxpayer funding because we could fund them and then something totally dramatically different could happen with the building that doesn't fall underneath historic preservation. And that's where we have preservation restrictions. And that's what we were talking about tonight in terms of having a 15-year term restriction that we would develop in-house between our city solicitor department and the applicant's lawyer, and then it would be approved and then submitted to the building department.
Thank you. And one question is not related to this, it's related to FIFA. Where I can learn how the FIFA work, because my organization, United Sikh, we always wherever a flood happen or tornado, like right now we are in Pakistan, right? Because of flooding was happening a lot over there. And then our mayor reached to me, see if we can do something for Puerto Rico. Because the funding was limited, and I sent him a message. I said, if we work with the FIFA, and if the city can ask FIFA they can join us, or they can send us a letter, and then we can gather some funding for our people and some funding for FIFA, and we can work on Puerto Rico, the flooding. So my question is where I can learn about FIFA and how the FIFA work around here with them locally.
May I ask, what is FIFA?
FIFA is Megan was talking about FIFA before. Is an organization, they do funding. All the private non-profit organization work with them, and say for the flooding happens, and everybody who registered with them, and FIFA send them email, hey, you know what, we need you here. So say the funding we need about $500,000, right? So we have to raise $250,000, and then FIFA give us other half money, so we can do the work. But we need, right now in Pakistan, we are spending almost close to $4 million because it was a bad flooding happened over there. So we go all over the world. It's like a Red Cross. We work like a Red Cross, but for us, all the workers, they are volunteer. They don't get paid. How the Red Cross work for us is all volunteer. Whoever's want to volunteer, and they put their own time, and then we go and work for that.
A lot of our applicants have matching funds, and that creates its own complication around sometimes they're piecing it together. So all the housing projects are way out, right? Like 2025, right? So they have a lot of time to be able to pull together all of this funding sources and package it together and make it work. And sometimes the city hall stained glass windows, right? Like tonight you heard they're matching funds with Mass Historic Commission to put together enough funding to do more windows. A lot of folks come to us as what's called first in money, because they need to be able to show they have local support in order to access state and federal funding. So for example, the Wayfinders project, we were only $100,000 or $250,000 of a $13 million project. Right. So really a small percentage of the budget, but it allowed them to get access to state and federal funding they would not have been able to get otherwise. So yeah, often our applicants are chasing funding from a lot of different sources and trying to put it together. And we're a part of the piece, a piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Okay. Anything underneath other that folks want to address? Because I know we're over time and I'd like us to wrap. Amy, yep.
Yeah, just something quickly. The Holyoke Boys and Girls Club just wanted to remind everyone that they're doing a playground dedication on September 30th from 4:30 to 5:30. So this was one of the first projects funded by CPA, an FY19 children's playground. So it's going to be at 70 Nick Cosmos Way, and it's a dedication to Bruce E. Thompson, who is the executive director of the club for 28 years. So they've been specifically invited all of you and me to be there outside for the dedication at the playground.
Amy, if I ask you a question, that's Friday, right?
September 30th. Let me see. I'll tell you.
Yes. It's Friday.
What Friday?
Sorry, that's my busy time Friday night for the restaurant. I'm sorry, can't make it.
If you can make it though, you should let Eileen Kavanaugh know. If I forwarded you all that email, but if you don't remember, the contact info, you can just shoot me an email and I can send it to you again.
All right, thank you.
The other piece that I have is the next meeting is Monday, October 17th at 6 p.m.
So my question to changing meeting to Monday because of Rivera, right?
The idea is to move to the third Mondays.
Because if he couldn't make it, he couldn't make it another day. Mm-hmm. But my question is, he didn't even stay half of the time and he left.
I know.
That's frustrating.
It is, yeah.
Maybe he's busy.
And are we sure that day works, October 17th?
We had said that we were going to do the third Monday moving forward.
I mean, does it work with the city hall chambers, or is this for a Zoom meeting, or I don't know?
Yeah, I think it's part of a longer conversation that we have to have that we don't have time for tonight. But the question that we have to have at some point is, what does it look like to shift to a hybrid meeting? And does the committee want to entertain that idea? But I don't want to have it until more of the committee's here. And we have time to have it. It's late.
I think right now just stay there that way because maybe it will be hard for me to going 2 times to the city hall.
Yeah, well, we can do another meeting that's Zoom only in October, and on the October agenda, we'll just put that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you in October.
Okay, a motion to adjourn at 8:15.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. I got a lot to learn today. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.